Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy freaking Tuesday, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It's a great day to be great. It's a great day to talk through some of the bigger news in the NFL from a, eventful Monday with some of the cut news coming up. Go through some of the biggest sheesh moments from last season and, of course, spit out some flaming hot takes. So joining me, as always, in this lovely edition of the Fantasy Life Show is none other than Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, all-around baller, Dwayne "The Rock" McFarland. Dwayne, man, I see you like 3 times a day now. It's great, man. How's it going?
Yeah, man, it's great. We get to hang out in the morning. We talk some football. Then we get to draft in the evening together. That's great. Like, we get to take the analysis. We take all the work we do, and then we apply it in real life. Man, we had a banger last night over on Real Time Sports. Start off with Jonathan Taylor, come back with Puka Nacua, still get Malik Nabers, Jalen Waddle, and then tacked on T. Higgins, Romo Dunze, got Trey McBride on that squad, and then like 27 running backs. So Caleb Williams for Producer Swing is the starting quarterback on that squad. Jaden Daniels got sniped in front of us. So yeah, man, having a lot of fun.
If you guys want to check out Dwayne and I drafting, us yelling at each other, us agreeing with each other, and everything in between, you can do that on Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life YouTube page. But yeah, guys, a lot to go through today. But first, a quick word on Fantasy Life Plus. Fantasy Life Plus is our premium product over here at Fantasy Life, and not trying to break your guys' bank account. Our Tier 1 package comes out to about $40 per year. Tier 2 is still less than a Chipotle burrito per month, but really, guys, from Dwayne's utilization tool suite to our draft champion mock draft tool and everything in between really do offer a lot of goodness. And personally, something I was using last night in auction draft is just our estimated auction values, and not trying to hurt myself, pat my own back here, but I now have gone through 2 auction drafts and really was pleased at just how accurate a lot of our estimations wound up being. And it gave me just a good base to know not when to overbid on people. So again, even just that extra little piece of the puzzle, I do think goes a long way. So Fantasy Life Plus, check it out. Dwayne, it is cut day in the NFL. 948 NFL players need to be waived, released, or moved to the reserve list by 4 p.m. Eastern today. So we're going to have a lot of news flying in, but that didn't stop it from coming in a bit yesterday as well. Starting with one of the top players in all of fantasy football, CeeDee Lamb, finally getting paid 4 years, $136 million, $100 million guaranteed. And now only Justin Jefferson at $35 million is making more on an annual basis than CeeDee Lamb at $34 million among all NFL wide receivers. So, Dwayne, don't think we were exactly panicking over it, but hey, it got done. It's about time.
Yeah, move CeeDee Lamb back to number 1 overall in PPR ranks. I think he should also be there in half PPR ranks. That's where I had him before the holdout. Before the holdout basically got to like 2 weeks ago, where it was like, all right, like maybe I just got to be careful here and just go ahead and put CMC ahead of him. But I've got Lamb back up at the top. I don't think there's a lot that we have to talk about. CeeDee Lamb's awesome. He's the focal point of the Dallas Cowboys offense. It's like the perfect situation, Ian. You had a young wide receiver that's proven they're a great playmaker. They play in an offense where, like I said, they are that centerpiece. Not a lot of competition for targets. They move him all over the field. They get him into the slot. I mean, look, the guy had over 1,700 yards receiving last year, guys. Like, I mean, he could have 2,000 yards receiving in a year. Look, I think I have a projecting for like around 1,400, 1,500. So we're not saying that's going to happen. But man, like, is there a safer pick at the top of your fantasy drafts than CeeDee Lamb? I don't think there is.
Again, if you wanted to go with the big 3 running back for roster construction, okay, but I think you're really hard pressed to really find a wide receiver with, any less red flags than what CeeDee is working with at this point. You brought up the usage, Dwayne, a league high 179 targets last year. And you mentioned the slot. Hell, there's even a good amount of reps at this point of CeeDee playing running back, wound up getting 14 carries on the ground last year as well. So currently on a 13-game streak with at least 100 yards and or a touchdown. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb, pretty darn good at football. And we are all thrilled to have him back in practice, Ian, ready to go for week 1. What's up?
Rather start a draft with CMC and Drake London, who often makes it down there in home leagues and 2 wide receiver leagues, or would you rather start with CeeDee Lamb and Achane?
That's the thing, man.
That's the hard one, isn't it?
If you could give me Marv over London, I think I'd sign up for that.
I think you could get Marv too. That's where he goes in those.
I think I feel better about it, man. Like, especially on real-time sports, as we're talking about, we see how the running backs start flying out. For me, it's just getting, and I'm not saying CeeDee's not in a tier of his own, but after those big three RBs, I just feel like we have a problem with almost every other player out to position. I can go either way on it.
Yeah, the challenge is on real-time sports, running backs are hyper hyped up. Like we saw Kenneth Walker going round 2. We've seen Rachaad White going round 2. And the leagues that most people are playing in, like you're getting Achane coming back to you at the turn. If not, you're getting one of Pacheco or Derrick Henry. So anyway, I think it's one of those situations where you're probably not making a wrong decision. But I kind of like the safety of Lamb as my number 1 pick, a little bit less invested in the running back position as far as injuries go. And I still come back and get one of those other guys. So I think I lean to Lamb. But yes, strategy overall this season, I have talked a lot about superhero actually really can work in your home leagues, or hero. Hero is my preferred, but superhero can also work.
Speaking of hero RB, potentially getting messed up. It happened, Dwayne. The Broncos are expecting to move on from backup running back Samaje Perine, which in and of itself isn't the biggest deal. The bigger question now becomes, where will Perine land? So not officially released yet. Allegedly, the Broncos are, talking to a number of teams about a potential trade. But Dwayne, from Cincinnati to Dallas to even looking at other teams, Titans, Ravens, Browns, Chiefs, Chargers, Packers, Bills, Jets, not saying they're all interested, but there are a lot of depth charts where if you add someone like Perine, he goes ahead and carves out, 30, 40 targets, maybe 50 rush attempts. Again, it's not going to be the biggest swing in all of fantasy football, but Perine's going to really mess up one of these backfields.
Yeah, he can just be that nuisance. There's also some backfields that are so bad, like would it surprise us he's immediately the running back 2, and if something happens with the running back 1, he could be on the field more. So I've moved him up in the ranks just based on, like, we don't know the landing spot for sure, but I've put him basically in view where drafters are going to be seeing his name. So if you're now drafting today, you're going to suddenly see Samaje Perine in a spot where he would be draftable versus he wasn't before. Let's say he landed with the Cowboys, Ian. We're not expecting that to completely derail Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott. But I mean, he's at least in the mix. How far up would you move him if he landed with a team like that where we've got so much uncertainty around the starters?
I don't like RB 55 or something like that, man. Like, I don't think him going anywhere is going to change much. Like, he couldn't make the Broncos roster. Last year, he actually got paid, and he was still someone that we barely even trusted in fantasy. And I'm more worried about him going to somewhere like Dallas and taking away from someone like Rico Dowdle, taking away from someone like Ezekiel Elliott, and turning what we presume to be a 2 running back committee into 3. Because remember, Dwayne, there's only so many workhorse running backs. We know we're not getting that, but once these committees get stretched from 2 backs to 3, that's when it gets more complicated. So Dallas wouldn't be ideal, but I think we all know the real concern here is a potential return home to the Cincinnati Bengals. The question would be, what version of Perine are we necessarily getting? Because yes, the last time we saw him there, 95 carries, 51 targets, that's problematic, Dwayne. That said, 2 years before that, only averaged, 59 carries and 21 and a half targets per year. That's something that we see in a lot more depth charts around the league from your number 3 overall running back. So if we do see Perine end up in Cincy, am I right in assuming that this will be far more problematic for Chase Brown than Zach Moss? Because again, in that last year, 51 targets, but Johnny Manziel meme 0 carries inside the 5-yard line for Perine.
Honestly, I still think it's hard to say. Like, theoretically, that sounds right. The problem is, really, Zach Moss has been the long down and distance back, meaning you get into 3rd and long, you're likely to get a blitz, you're going to get man coverage. You want your most dependable back on the field to pick up the blitz. Perine has handled that role in the past, and Zach Moss has been handling that in practice. We've seen it some not in the preseason because he hasn't played, but we've seen that from him also in the past last year for the Indianapolis Colts. So I don't know. The good news is long down and distance, like, that's one of the least valuable plays, for running backs anyway. It just doesn't normally equate to fantasy points. The reason why, it's 3rd and 7. You're not checking it down to like a running back that can't really make people miss. You're trying to throw the ball past the sticks. Second, like I mentioned, you're often getting blitzed. They have to stay in to pick up the damn blitz most of the time. So it's not really that valuable of a snap. So we would still prefer him to be on the field, right? Like, we'll always want a player to be on the field versus being off the field, but I don't think it's absolutely huge. I think the biggest impact here, Ian, is just like confidence now in this Denver backfield. I think we've got this thing isolated down to 3. I updated the projections this morning. I've got Javonte Williams now with 181 carries. You guys can check all of this out over at FantasyLife. 766 yards for Javonte. I've got him right now with 5 rushing touchdowns. Again, we don't think this offense is going to be that good, guys. Could Javonte score more than that? I know that sounds probably soft, as some might say. Sounds kind of soft on the projections there. But looking at an offense like this, it's hard to get overly excited about the touchdowns. But the utilization is probably going to be there. But man, Jaleel McLaughlin, I bumped up to 118 carries, 525 rushing yards. I've got him at 3 rushing touchdowns, but I've got him with 41 receptions. Javonte with 47 catches. That's the key, guys. The Broncos, we've got Sean Payton. He has a long history of getting his backs involved in the passing game. And then when you pair that with the fact that we really only have Courtland Sutton, that is it. That is the only option we have in this offense that we know can even go out there and earn any targets. And he's not an elite target earner. So they're going to do a lot to scheme up plays for these running backs. Now, I also gave Estime a bump here, Ian. I've got him up to a little over 12% of the team's rushing attempts. We had him like down around 8. So yeah, I've took Pirine out of the mix. He's out of it here. And then if you look at just the way these guys project, those numbers that I just gave you would project, just pure projections, would put Javonte Williams at running back 20 in my projection process. It would put Jaleel McLaughlin at running back 36. So these are guys that now we have more confidence. Just because what you just said about Pirine arriving on the scene over at Cincinnati, that's now gone from the Broncos. We're still giving Estime a little bit of work, but we don't have to worry about Pirine stealing any of these targets, which is huge for both Williams and McLaughlin, because I don't think Estime is going to get many of those.
Broncos number 1 in RB targets last year, 4th in expected backfield PPR points per game, despite only having the 27th ranked scoring offense. So I'm with Dwayne. If you're not leaving a draft without a Broncos running back, not saying your team's dead in the water, but certainly some really good options out there for 0 and hero RB drafters alike. So those were the 2 big news items. And again, going to have plenty rolling in throughout the day. But in the meantime, here is your guys' daily, quickly, rapid recap. Starting off, Dwayne, Puka Nacua working his way back into practice as expected, fully expected to play in week 1, which is great. Packers running back Marshawn Lloyd, though, expect to start the season on IR with that hamstring injury. Looking like A.J. Dillon will be Josh Jacobs' backup for Meow. Christian Kirk back at practice. Awesome. Jalen Warren says his hamstring is feeling better and expects to play week 1. Awesome. Not so awesome. These 3 players are expecting to stay on the pup and thus miss the first 4 weeks of the year. Vikings tight end TJ Hawkinson, Panthers running back Jonathan Brooks, and Ravens running back Keaton Mitchell. So none especially surprising, but again, out for at least the first 4 weeks of 2024. Meanwhile, Odell Beckham Jr. might come off the pup by Tuesday, but Mike McDaniel stressed that they're not going to put him out there until he and Tua are comfortable together. Maybe, just maybe, Malik Washington's season will persist for the first few weeks of 2024. Meanwhile, Deontay Foreman not practicing with a rib injury, and Naeem Hines will remain out of practice. Jerome Ford, maybe someone we can lean on during the early weeks of 2024. Browns are getting healthier at the line of scrimmage, though. Thank God, based on some of that preseason performance. Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills both passed their physicals and are coming off the PUP list. Meanwhile, in Miami, outside linebacker Bradley Chubb, game changer at the line of scrimmage, will begin the season on the PUP list. So a bit of a downgrade over there for the Dolphins defense. Maybe we get some fantasy-friendly shootouts out of it. Otherwise, guys, one day after we came and told you how, Jared Mayo had actually called Drake May the second best quarterback on the roster, he went on the radio and said that Drake May has outplayed Jacoby Brissett. So he's kind of doing the Mac thing from It's Always Sunny, playing both sides, so he always comes out on top. Got to respect that. Meanwhile, a little bit, we talked about Brandon Ayuk all freaking offseason, but remember, Trent Williams also has not been practicing, and he reportedly will not return to the 49ers until his contract situation is resolved. So I think we all remember those 3 straight 17, point performances by the 49ers last year without Debo. Remember, Trent also wasn't on the field, potentially huge ramifications for an offensive line that, other than Trent, was pretty mediocre last season. Dalvin Cook flew to Dallas for a visit last night, got a great video of him throwing a medicine ball against the wall. And breaking news, guys, says he feels the best he has in years. Yeah, we'll see what happens here. I will say Dalvin landing on the Cowboys, maybe, decent news for actually Rico and Zeke, considering who else they could bring out. Also, Packers traded for Titans quarterback Malik Willis, got a 7th round pick, basically. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But right now, backup/developmental option. And finally, some notable cuts for now. Sad day in the Hartitz household. Broncos expect to move on from Tim Patrick. Hate to see it. Bucks wide receiver Sterling Shepard is out. Lions wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones is out. Ravens wide receiver Russell Gage and 49ers running back Matt Breida all out of the picture. So again, plenty more cuts coming, and we'll update you tomorrow morning as well. But yeah, that was the news. And now, time for some sheesh. What a great bumper. I don't know what that noise is, Dwayne, but I like it. It's provocative. So looking at some of the sheesh stuff, guys, this is going to be a lot more, relevant and just actionable once we actually get real life football going on. But wanted to give a shout out and just refresh you guys that, we're going to be talking some sheesh here on Fantasy Life show during this season. And basically when I say sheesh, I'm talking about the tilting moments that happen in fantasy football that maybe you can't just pick up from the box score, the overthrown potential touchdowns to a wide open wide receiver, the drops, the nullified touchdowns, and today's main focus, running backs who got stopped at the 1 yard line, Dwayne, and did not score a touchdown on the same drive. So just wanted to go through last season's leaderboard and see if there is anything we can maybe glean from what happened in 2023. So really, man, the number one running back in terms of most times stopped at the 1 yard line, did not score a touchdown on the same drive. Now Texans, then Bengals running back Joe Mixon, 7 times, Dwayne. Now a couple of those came on the same drive, but it's a good example that these are the sort of goal line opportunities that should be on the table for Zach Moss and maybe even Chase Brown in this typically high-flying Bengals offense, as long as we have a healthy number 9 under center.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Mixon is just running hot as far as the teams he gets to play for. Gets to play for the Bengals and Joe Burrow. You got wide receivers all around you to help you get the ball down the field. He's like, I'm going to leave. Most backs, have to go somewhere and just play out that, third contract somewhere where it's just like, oh, man, I'm just trying to grind out a few more years in the league, man, make my money. He goes to the freaking Houston Texans. I mean, they've got an offensive line that honestly, it disappointed us last year. Now, they had a lot of injuries throughout the season, but they've invested in this offensive line. We've got Bobby Slowick really, running the offense. He comes over from the 49ers 2 seasons ago, was one of these guys that was in the head coaching race. But yeah, we've got the same thing. We've got Nico Collins. We've got Stephon Diggs coming over also this offseason from the Bills. And then you've got Tank Dell, like an electric playmaker. This could be the highest scoring offense in the league. And you could have a back that honestly, looking behind him, Ian, like Dameon Pierce looks terrible. The guy that we like the most behind him is Cam Akers, who's got, coming off of another Achilles tear. I thought you had the great video. He balanced himself out and he hit the triple spin move after he's injured both of the Achilles. He's now back on equal footing. But yeah, man, like Joe Mixon is such a favorite to lead this backfield. And in fantasy drafts right now, like I don't like it because like people in home leagues are taking him like early in round 3. And I just get iffy about an older player with that many touches. But man, whenever he falls down into that early round 4 range, especially if you started with 2 wide receivers and 1 running back, like I think he's totally in play. And I am with you, man. It wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't make him the favorite to lead the league in rushing touchdowns, but I think he's definitely one of the names that should sit at the top of that list as one of the favorites.
I am with you there, Dwayne. And we also see Devin Singletary down here on this list of 4, so very much could have a similar situation in Houston. And yeah, I think I got a few more things to say about Joe Mixon here in just a bit when we get to our hot takes, so stay tuned for that. In second place, Dwayne, it was a tie between the guy who I think most people probably would have presumed was number 1, DeAndre Swift with the Eagles, and then also Austin Eckler with the Chargers. So with Swift, again, 6 different times stopped at the 1 yard line and did not score last season, because what happens when you get to the 1, they're about to push Jalen Hurts tush into the end zone. So Hurts had 16 carries inside the 5, but what was a little surprising, Dwayne, is Swift still had 10. I mean, that was tied for 13th among all running backs, and Eagles running backs as a whole since 2021, which is when Jalen Hurts took over. Eagles running backs lead the NFL in carries between the 2 and the 5 yard line. But once we get to the 1 yard line, they rank 30th. So do we think, Dwayne, Saquon Barkley can just be 3 feet better than someone like DeAndre Swift on average? Because again, the opportunities are there if you just don't get stopped at the 1.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to do better than what Swift did. I think there's 2 takeaways here, right? You got to have Saquon Barkley. You got to take Jason Kelsey's advice, which is just what Ian just told you. Like, dude, punch it in on the first one. After that, sorry. So just going to have a little bit more, not that any running back isn't trying to score, right, every time they touch the ball down inside the 5, but a little more emphasis of knowing that, okay, if I don't get this, then Jalen's just going to steal that. So I could see 10 of those carries that didn't get in for Swift, maybe 30% of those turn into touchdowns for Saquon Barkley this year. That would definitely help him, because we think they'll probably be his worst year ever, right, as far as in the receiving game. But we could also have his best yards per carry that we've seen in the last 3 to 4 years. So the question with Saquon is like the health. I think the other potential takeaway here is, people are just like so assuming that, like, and I've seen like some big accounts that I really respect, just assuming that no, DeAndre Swift is not going to get the carries inside the 5. Like the Eagles saw enough in this guy to try to give those to him last year. great. He didn't score on the first time every time, Ian, and then you get Jalen Hurts who gets to go in. But it's all up in the air for the Bears right now as to who might get the carries inside the 5-yard line. It could be a rotation, but we could also, be doing the Sunday night. I know we love to go here. We're doing the first Sunday night recap, and you guys make sure we're going to be doing that every Sunday night after the main slate of games is over. We could look up and be like, wow, like they're giving DeAndre Swift like most of the carries inside the 5. And if that happens, man, that guy is getting drafted way too late right now in Fantasyland.
Definitely something to keep in mind. Once you're in, literally, guys, like round 6, round 7 in a lot of these drafts, after a lot of the top wide receivers are already off the board to begin with. So just another few quick notes. Latavius Murray had 5 such instances of being stopped at the 1 and not scoring. Again, he had 11 carries inside the 5-yard line. So as much as Josh Allen, yes, is going to continue to be involved, might be room for a James Cook or maybe even a Ray Davis to hopefully get some of those vulture opportunities. Also, David Montgomery down there with 4. Yeah, the guy scored 13 touchdowns. Waived Jahmyr Gibbs to stay on the field and still had extra meat on the bone. That's just how fantasy-friendly the Detroit Lions backfield has been over the years. And Tony Pollard also with 4, but my God, if you guys forget, sorry to bring up, some fantasy PTSD, but that one against the Dolphins, still to this day, I have no idea how he did not score. The
so
screenshot
brutal
from hell. I know, man. It was so bad. And that was after Pollard even said that he was feeling better, following his offseason surgery. So certainly, I think I speak for all of us when I do say sheesh. Dwayne, floor is yours.
What's the big takeaway here? What do all of those running backs have in common? What kind of teams did they play on?
Pretty good ones, Dwayne.
Pretty good offenses. Yeah. So again, that's back to the comment earlier around the Broncos backfield. Get excited about the receptions. Not so sure about the touchdowns.
It's also pretty freaking good. Mike's Hard Lemonade. We want to just give a quick shout out to them because, hey, Fantasy Life fans, let me ask you a question. Was your day hard enough for a Mike's Hard Lemonade? Are you in a slow draft that just won't end? Were you one pick away from the perfect quarterback wide receiver stack, but had a sheeshy moment happen to you and got sniped? Living the fantasy life is hard, and Mike's Hard Lemonade is the reward for a hard-earned thirst. Reward yourself today. Go to www.mikeshard.com to find out where you can get Mike's nearest you. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. And now it's time for some hot takes. Dwayne, you had a great article go out a couple weeks ago, really just kind of putting your neck on the line here with some spicier takes in the fantasy community. And we're going to go through some of those along with a few I got. So starting with you, my friend, we're talking a little Mr. Ride or Die himself, Kyler Murray. What do you got?
Yeah, Kyler Murray, my prediction that's going to be spicy, going to be bold, Ian, is that he finishes as a top 3 quarterback. And when you think about like the equation that has to come together to see this sort of upside, it's all about the natural resources, right? And that immediately dwindles your pull down. What you're looking for are players that have dual threat capability. And the thing that we sometimes forget, right, is there's the passing side to the dual threat capability. Like we all get so focused on the rushing, and there's great reason for that, guys. Look, we've talked about it multiple times. 21 quarterbacks since 2011 have had under 3,500 yards passing, right? But had at least 100 rushing attempts in the season. Their average finish was the QB8. It's just hard to fail if you're getting those sort of carries. So the rushing matters. But the thing we have with Kyler Murray, Ian, is we've seen him put up tape. We've seen him put a season together where we know he can be a 4,000-yard passer. So this guy could potentially come out. He has the upside to, I'm not projecting him for 750 yards rushing, but he has the upside to hit 750. He averages 30 yards per game over the last few seasons, but he also has the ability to hit a big spike. Would it surprise us if he suddenly had a year where he ran for 45 yards per game? He also doesn't get the carries down inside the 5 that you're going to get out of Jalen Hurts, out of Josh Allen, and probably Anthony Richardson this season. But he's still sneaky, and he's still a guy that will scramble once you get down inside the 5, and he could easily pop for 7 or 8 rushing touchdowns. Again, not going to get used those other guys the way the other guys do, but now you just add in the fact that we've got Marvin Harrison Jr. added to the offense. We've got Trey McBride, who broke out late last season, looks like one of the better young tight ends in the league. Man, I love it. I love it.
You're not going to give a shout out to our 1-2 short king, Greg Dortch. How dare you, Dwayne, come on this show?
I've never seen you wave me on, and I knew it had to be Greg Dortch.
That's right. So again, I kid everyone, but yes, Kyler Murray certainly set up well during his career. QB 11 in fantasy points per game, QB 7, and even last year with no wide receiver one to speak of, Marquise Brown really hurt towards the end, QB 9. So reigning 31st ranked scoring defense could be a lot of fantasy friendly shootouts. And Dwayne, I think we can agree one of the most egregious ESPN ADPs out there. I mean, pick 83 is what I'm seeing on our ADP tool right now. That's behind guys like Jordan Love, like Dak Prescott, and like Joe Burrow. So you're not going to get that in every league. But man, I know that Jaden Daniels is your guy. He's the skeleton key in your perfect QB draft strategy. But man, Dwayne, God forbid you can actually wait until round 7 or round 8 with Kyler. I'll sign up for that 8 days of the week.
Absolutely. Love Kyler. You can stack him with Trey McBride. You can stack him with Marvin Harrison Jr. if you're looking to really get spicy and be in on that offense. You don't have to in your home leagues, but I don't mind doing it.
I don't mind it as well, my friend. All right, guys, I mentioned before that we were going back to some Joe Mixon, and here we are. My hot take is that Joe Mixon will be outscoring Derrick Henry in full PPR scoring, per game basis if you guys want to get specific. But yeah, this happened last year, but it does seem like that the reality that Henry is now over there in Baltimore, everyone's just expecting it's going to be fantastic, 15 plus rushing touchdowns on the ground, and that could happen. But I just think the disparity between the two guys right now is a bit wide for me, Dwayne. I mean, looking at it, ESPN, Henry's going pick 19, Mixon pick 31. On Sleeper, pick 18 versus pick 43. On Yahoo, pick 14 versus pick 38. Again, I was in an auction draft last night, full PPR. Derrick Henry went for $40. I got Joe Mixon for $14. So I'm not saying that Henry shouldn't be projected to potentially go more than Mixon, but honestly, Dwayne, maybe I am saying that should be the case, because when we look at this Houston Texans backfield, I just don't see Mixon leaving the field all that often. And we're under a coordinator in Bobby Slowick, who we just saw do that with Devin Singletary. Weeks 9 through 18 last year, Singletary had the 4th most touches of any running back and was the RB8 in expected PPR points per game. So I'm with you in that early 3rd round. I'm not exactly going out of my way to get Mixon in each and every draft, but I'll tell you this, man, I'm sure as hell not going out of my way to get Henry at the early parts of round 2 when I know someone like Mixon is there in round 3 if I want to fall back on that.
Yeah, I think taking Henry early round 2 versus having a shot at Joe Mixon in early round 4 is probably that's just that cost difference that you don't probably want to take on. Now, I will say Derrick Henry is honestly the equivalent of Jalen Hurts at the running back position as far as his ability to punch in carries from inside the 5-yard line. He's one of these few guys that it's like every year he's so consistent, in his ability to A, get those carries the team wants to give them to him, and then B, be able to punch them through. You can't meet Derrick Henry at the goal line and have any chance. Actually, you can't meet Derrick Henry 1 yard from the goal line and have any chance of stopping him, even with 2 defenders. He's going into the end zone. Whereas Mixon, he doesn't have that. So I get it. I agree that the ceiling case is higher for Derrick Henry, because with Lamar Jackson and what he does in the run game, theoretically Derrick Henry could score 20 rushing touchdowns and we wouldn't be floored. We would never project it. So I would never project that kind of ceiling for Mixon. But once you kind of look at the median outcomes and what we expect, and we love the Texans offense, yeah, I'm with you. I think getting Joe Mixon, 2 rounds later, that is a bit of, and man, $14 versus $40 in an auction. I'm with you. Give me Joe Mixon all day.
Again, nice little added bonus of that Fantasy Life Plus subscription, which you can check out on FantasyLife.com. But yeah, man, for my money's worth, Dwayne, you look at like Christian Okoye back in the day, Marshawn Lynch, obviously, Adrian Peterson, and Derrick Henry certainly deserves to be in that conversation. I certainly wouldn't want to be meeting him anywhere near the goal line. I like talking about fantasy football from the friendly confines of my office instead. But yeah, guys, Joe Mixon, the only running back in fantasy football with top 12 finishes in each of the past 3 seasons, minimum 8 games played. Sorry, Christian McCaffrey. Last year, Kamara, Etienne, Barkley, Rashad White, and Joe Mixon, all top 12 running backs, despite not averaging more than 4 yards per carry. So remember, when we're in a high-scoring offense that can get those touchdowns, when we have a running back like Mixon with 50-plus catch upside, really don't even need to be all that efficient on the ground in order to make a hell of a lot of fantasy points come to fruition there. So again, Joe Mixon more than Derrick Henry. Yeah, we're getting hot takey today. Why the hell not? So before we keep on going, guys, a quick word on Paramount Plus. You won't miss a minute of action when you stream the NFL on CBS Live on Paramount Plus this season. Stream every local, national, and postseason NFL game on CBS Live all the way through the AFC Championship on Paramount Plus. All you got to do, guys, is download Paramount Plus today to start your free trial and unlock a season of epic moments, including all of your local Week 1 games, only on Paramount Plus. Dwayne, we're going back to you with another hot take about an offense that, let's face it, wasn't a lot of fun to invest in over the past couple of years, whether it was Arthur Smith, Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, whoever you wanted to blame, you had a lot of ammunition to go ahead and do that. That said, new coach, new quarterback, new Atlanta Falcons offense, Dwayne. So what are you feeling here?
Yeah, I think the Falcons become a top 3 offense. That's my hot take. And that obviously means, Ian, that Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts all smash in fantasy football. I get a lot of questions about this, man. I don't know about having 2 Falcons. I don't know about having 3 Falcons. I get it. You might not want to have 3, but I don't shy away from it. Like when they fall to me at the right picks, I go for it. Could any offense run as pure as what the Falcons ran this offseason? I actually was going back in and looking at this and trying to find a team that ran this pure. So number one, they've invested recently in their offense, even though we, struggled to invest in them over the last few years in fantasy. It didn't work out. But Kyle Pitts, round 1, pick 4 in 2021. Drake London, round 1, pick 8 in 2022. Last year, Bijan Robinson, round 1, pick 8. Yet, Arthur Smith found ways to not use these guys, Ian. Bijan Robinson, 50% of the rushing attempts after you take him with the 8th pick. You don't take a running back at the 8th pick to give them less than 50% of the carries. Come on, man. Like, what are we doing? Laugh out loud. Drake London, under a 90% route participation rate, which is what typical wide receiver ones get, and 7 out of 15 non-injury games. Almost half of them. Laugh out loud. What are we doing, Arthur Smith? What are you still trying to prove? Like, does your dad hate you or something? I don't know what's going on with you. Kyle Pitts, man, this guy, you spend the 4th pick overall and you won't even get him to an 80% route participation, only 9 of 17 games. So number one, immediately, Arthur Smith, handicapped all these players. Number 2, they had terrible quarterbacks. We're talking about Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke. Let's not forget Marcus Mariota basically ran out there for a good portion of a season. I mean, this team averaged 191 passing yards per game, 1.1 touchdowns through the air under Arthur Smith. And part of that's not even his fault. It's really hard to overcome that kind of quarterback play, guys. You could argue that Arthur Smith was doing some things well, not the utilization of players. But Kirk Cousins, man, over that same 3-year span, 271 yards per game and 1.9 touchdowns per game. So, we're talking about doubling the touchdowns per game. We're talking about, a potential increase of 50 to 70 yards per game passing through the air. So we've got the talent. We've got more playing time coming to these players. We've got a massive upgrade. Oh, by the way, if something happens to Cousins, we're worried about the Achilles. I know some people didn't like this pick, but Michael Penix Jr., they at least invested in a backup quarterback in round 1. Okay, so he would immediately be a guy we probably feel more comfortable than any of the other names I just named to you at quarterback. So even if he has to get on the field, it should be better. So that's nice insulation. And the final thing, the replacement of Arthur Smith as the play caller is Zach Robinson, who gets his players in motion so much. What's funny is Arthur Smith uses a lot of motion, but he's a complete doofus. He puts guys that you don't even care about putting in motion. It's like, oh, Cole Pruitt, going to get him in motion, guys, right at the snap. Oh, Jonnu Smith, going to get him. Those are the guys that led his team in motion. You go look at what Zach Robinson and where he comes from with what Sean McVay does. Who do they get in motion? It's freaking Cooper Kupp's in motion at the snap. It's Puka Nacua. Those are the 2 teams that led motion at the snap. Drake London, 3% of snaps in his career, he's been in motion. He's been a statue under Arthur Smith. So, yeah, man, they ran so pure. I know this was a long one. I just kind of went off here. But it's really hard to run this pure, so I absolutely love this offense.
I was going to say, Dwayne, tell us how you really feel about the Atlanta Falcons experience over these. Hey, great supporting cast. Dwayne outlined it. And again, I've kind of tried to put together a supporting cast rate and help quantify this, where you take everything other than PFF passing grade. So rushing, receiving, run blocking, pass blocking. And these last 2 seasons, the Falcons were literally 1st and then 9th in 2023. So PFF's rating 4th ranked offensive line. They return all 5 starters. Really is a great situation for all these skill position players to be dropped into. So Dwayne, I think just the one kind of, question I would have is if Pitts is going off, if Bijan is going off, if London is going off, should we be a little more invested in Kirk Cousins, someone that's regularly available, man, deep into some of these redraft leagues where you only need one quarterback? Not saying you should be basing your entire strategy around getting them, but for example, last night, and everyone can go to your Twitter and check out the draft board, where again, feeling pretty good about it. But, we've kind of drawn that line almost like Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams is where we really want to get our one quarterback. But there's a chance we would have gotten sniped on Caleb Williams. And no, we weren't just going to draft Kirk Cousins where we were planning on drafting Caleb. We would have waited a couple more rounds. But if you do miss out on a top 12 quarterback, does Kirk Cousins become arguably your favorite target at cost?
Yeah, Kirk Cousins is essentially arbitrage play on Tua and on Jared Goff and some of the other pocket passers that go ahead of him. You could even say Brock Purdy. Now, we've got him lower because he is an older player coming off of the Achilles injury that happened mid-season. So we have to have a little bit of caution with him. But would it surprise me if he outscored all those guys? No, I mean, Kirk Cousins has been a top 12 quarterback like multiple years. Like, this is a guy that just kind of goes out there, does his job. People just kind of laugh because he wears like shirts that you would think like a regional manager for like an office supply company, would be like. Kirk Cousins is so unassuming. And like one of the great traits about him, like the guy just seems so humble, and it makes it so cool. Like whenever he like starts wearing gold chains and screaming, "Did you like that?" Because like you don't expect it from him. But yeah, man, Kirk Cousins is a guy that easily could be in that same range with those pure pocket passers and still give you a top 10 finish. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think where you brought him up, when you get completely cleaned out at quarterback, he is the guy people leave there the longest. And I will say he's kind of that last one, even though there's the injury risk, that I'm like, there's still some good upside here. And I still feel pretty good about the floor as long as the injury hold, as long as he doesn't have an injury situation.
We did kind of like our rich man, middle class man, poor man show last week. And this is another one of those situations where rich man, yeah, CJ Stroud and Joe Burrow as your high end kind of pocket passers. Middle class man, yeah, you get your Tua Tagovailoas and Jared Goffs of the world. Your quote unquote poor man's, but maybe that disparity isn't as wide as we think. Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, and Matthew Stafford, there to help save your fantasy team if you do get to that position in drafts.
Yeah, all right, Dwayne, if you knew Kirk Cousins was healthy all year, I would project him for more passing yards than Jared Goff. And I like Jared Goff. I love his offense, but I would project Kirk Cousins for more. Like, he's shown that he can be a higher end, pocket passer as far as passing yards. He was like the QB5 in fantasy points per game last year. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I would be doing that. So, so not the best thing. So, hey, I'm not going to pretend like Kirk Cousins has been playing lights out every single year of his career. Like, we have seen some lows. Same thing with Jared Goff. Don't just want to pretend like 2023 is our only data point there. But hey, man, more and more often, like, look at Stafford. But not bad seasons. Bad games. He has bad games, but not bad seasons. So that's
it's one of those things though, where these quarterbacks, once they get over 35, it's not becoming as big of an issue, in the year 2024. Mm-hmm. So certainly wouldn't be surprised if we see Kirk, start balling out like, the Achilles injury never happened. Knock on wood there. Come on, injury gods. Why the hell not? All right. My second bold call, my hot take here is going to be that James Conner finishes as a top 10 running back in PPR points per game. Some more Cardinals propaganda coming your way. So, hey guys, over the last 3 years, we're talking about the RB8, RB9, and last year RB13, and you've always been able to buy him at a fraction of that cost. I mean, 2021 ADP, RB35, then he was RB15, but last year RB25, and then this year, whether it's father time or the concern about Trey Benson, we continue to be able to get James Conner really late in the draft. So, Dwayne, I think we had to take him in round 5, somewhat recently in a 0 RB build, but round 6 is somewhere where you'll see him, and just again, depending on the format, hell, maybe even, leaking to the early parts of round 7. So unlikely, but personally, man, if we are in those situations where, God, we just love the wide receivers, we make it through, 3-4 rounds without a running back. To me, when you're looking at the David Montgomerys, the Ramondre Stevensons of the world, Najee Harris and those guys in that range, James Conner easily stands out because for the life of me, I can't figure out why he continues to be this cheap. Like, Dwayne, once we get to week 1, it's going to be really tough not to rank James Conner as a top 12 running back.
Yeah, people are going to have him ranked in the top 12. Like, they're not going to have Aaron Jones ranked that way. They're not going to have, Raheem Mostert probably ranked that way. It's another player that we really like. You're not going to rank Ramondre Stevenson as a top 12 running back maybe all season. I mean, he's on a terrible offense. We're not going to rank Javonte Williams as a top 12 running back in week 1. So I get it. It's about, it's not just what we're doing for week 1. Well, once you get in that range, I think you can start thinking that way a little bit. Those guys all have warts. Now, Trey Benson, coming into the fold. James Conner, another year older. He's a guy that's battled injuries. There's certainly more risk than ever with James Conner, because if he does leave the football field and Trey Benson comes out and actually shines, he's probably not coming back to his same role. He's not going to be bogarting everything, but it's all priced in right now, man. And I'm with you. Like the other night, whenever we took him as part of a 0 running back build, he was one of the only names that was sitting right there in the quote unquote dead zone that I was actually willing to put my chip on right there and say, you know what? I don't care. Let's at least get one of these guys. Like if he had gone, like I wouldn't have felt the same way. Or if we had to pick one, I would have felt worse about it. But when we got James Conner, he fell to us with the way the rest of our roster looked. I felt great.
You know what, as I'm talking about it, I think I came in soft. This is hot takes. Top 10, top 5. Top 5 for James Conner in the year 2024.
You're so
Heard
soft.
it here first. Oh, God, I'm so soft, man. We'll say, guys, top 5 in almost every advanced rushing metric last year. I know the guy's speed on Madden isn't the best, but go watch some of the highlights. You see far more, reversing field runs, I think, than you expect out of someone like Conner. Was making one-handed touchdown catches after, Kyler Murray was back in action. And yes, I admit that an older running back, someone that has missed a handful of games every year, might be a bit more injury prone than, your normal rookie entering the league. But it's not this binary thing where, you're either injury prone or you're not at running back. And again, shout out to DraftShark's injury predictor tool. That does a really good job of helping quantify that. And yeah, they do have James Conner at an 88.4% chance of missing at least 2 quarters in this season. But guess what? Kyron Williams is at 88.7%. Christian McCaffrey, 63%. Jonathan Taylor, 65%. So it is a concern, but I just feel like with guys like James Conner, we're almost really baking it in more so with them and not even considering them with the other running backs. So James Conner, nay top 10. We're talking a top 5 running back in PPR points per game in 2024. So 2 more scorching hot takes on the way. But first, a quick word on our friends over at DraftKings. Hey everyone, with the football season kicking off, it is the perfect time to dive into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet just $5 will instantly get $250 back in bonus bets. Plus, get this, 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. That is something we can all celebrate. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. And stay in on the action and use your $250 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. Of course, DraftKings is the place to bet on touchdowns. And if sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have a shot to win cash prizes. Their best ball offerings are also fantastic. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Again, new customers use our promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $250 back in bonus bets instantly, plus 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. All right, Dwayne, we saved the spiciest ones for last, and you have a certain wide receiver who I don't think people are necessarily sleeping on, but you could see a true ascension up into the upper echelon of the position. Let's talk a little Garrett Wilson here.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson, bold prediction, finishes as the wide receiver 1 in 2024. I mean, look at it. He's an elite player, Ian. We know this. He had a 30% target share and a 46% air yard share last season. Ooh. He's been good every year in all of the underlying data points that we care about that tell us how talented players are. He's great with the ball in his hands after the catch. He can attack every layer of the field. You want to get him something quick, let him get you 7, 8, 9 yards on a quick bubble screen. He can do that. You need him to beat man coverage on 3rd and 5 on a slant route, even though he's getting help coverage. He can get in there. You can thread the needle. He can come up with the catch. Oh, you need a guy that can give you a double move, get over the top of the defense, and score a long touchdown. Garrett Wilson's your guy. He can attack every single area of the field. The only problem with Garrett Wilson was Zach Wilson, the MILF Hunter. The MILF Hunter completely submarined the season for this guy. And we still saw the flashes of Zach Wilson. Unfortunately, I saw him against the Cowboys, that long touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson. So when you look at this and you get Aaron Rodgers back, look, guys, we're not saying Aaron Rodgers is 2015 or even 2000. Like, you don't have to go that far back, guys, honestly. You can go back to 2020, 2021, and this guy was balling out. And when you watch the film, Rodgers is getting older. He's not quite doing as much as far as scramble drills, those sort of things, Ian. But when you watch the film, like, all the throws are still there. The anticipation and timing that you're going to get from Aaron Rodgers versus what you had with Zach Wilson, who had 0 zero anticipation and timing. And usually when he did anticipate, it was like a pick six, the wrong anticipation, right? So when you get Aaron Rodgers and you put him here with, Garrett Wilson, I put it in the article, Ian. I don't know if I'm overstating it, but I said that this would basically be 100,000,000% improvement. Even if Aaron Rodgers is 70% of what we saw in 2020, it's kind of like that 60% of the time it works all the time, but like better. Like, it's better than the Black Panther cologne in Anchorman. But yeah, man, I just in 2021, Aaron Rodgers threw for 4,100 yards and 37 touchdowns, guys. It's 2024. He didn't play last season. I get it. We can't just expect Aaron Rodgers to be great forever. But whenever I watch him, I still like what I see. And I think Garrett Wilson he's the closest comp to what happened to CeeDee Lamb last year, moving from being a late round 1 pick to becoming the number 1 over wide receiver off the board. Same exact profile. And so, yeah, you get him at the end of round 1. Sometimes, man, in home leagues, he falls to round 2. Garrett Wilson in round 2, that's grand larceny.
I'm not a doctor, Dwayne, but the math seems to add up to me there. I mean, again, if we are just basing all these wide receiver evaluations on, the player's talent, who their quarterback is, how much target competition they have, and then sort of, the age cliff concerns or maybe injuries that are outstanding. Again, that's why CeeDee Lamb is the number 1 overall player in fantasy for so many people. But you could argue the next best bet after that is Garrett Wilson. I know Chris Olave, fellow Ohio State Buckeye OH, another one that, again, is checking a lot more boxes than not. I mean, you mentioned that last year in Green Bay, Dwayne, Davante Adams, 169 targets from Aaron. Last year, 168 for Garrett Wilson. The problem was how freaking uncatchable they were, and accordingly, Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson led the entire NFL in total targets that were deemed uncatchable by PFF. So tied for the 5th best open score, in terms of ESPN's, advanced receiver ratings. I mean, Dwayne, I know you were on Matt Harmon's podcast the other day, one of the, just best wide receiver aficionados in the freaking world at this point. Again, the only way I can really see Garrett busting is if he's not quite as good as we think he is. But man, I think he's really freaking good.
Yeah, I think he's really great as well. I think the low end comp you could give to Garrett Wilson, if you're just trying to be like super doomsday, is you could say Deontay Johnson. Similar skill sets, smaller players, gain great separation, turn defenders around all over the field. But for whatever reason, with Deontay, we've only had the one top 12 finish over his career. I think most of that ties to quarterback play. By the time he got to Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger was a shell of himself, and he still put up a wide receiver 8 overall finish with Ben Roethlisberger just barely hanging on by a thread. Then we had to move on to Kenny Pickett. That wasn't a good experience. We had Mason Rudolph on the field. So I think most of it was quarterback play, but that would be the example that you could use if you're trying to say a floor for Garrett Wilson and just, if you're trying to get the FUD going.
Stern but fair, as always, from Mr. McFarland. All right, guys, my last hot take here. I'm going Malik Nabers, outscoring straight up Marvin Harrison Jr. on the season. And, is someone who, depending on where you kind of have Nabers ranked, anywhere, Dwayne and I have him like right on the kind of wide receiver 1 borderline, wide receiver 12, wide receiver 13. But man, you go to ESPN and all of a sudden this guy's available in round 5, even on more high stakes sites, you will see him kind of going pick, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 21 is. Dwayne, last night when we were drafting with $300 on the line, we were able to get him in round 4. Meanwhile, Marvin Harrison Jr., a staple, usually going again at that round 1, round 2 turn, if not there, shortly there afterwards. So, one of those things where I think for us, Dwayne, maybe we don't consider it the spiciest take because we cannot stop drafting Malik Nabers in every draft we get him. But man, I'm old enough to remember all the pre-draft circus where God forbid you even threw out the idea that Malik Nabers could be the first wide receiver drafted or be as good as Marvin Harrison Jr. And it was almost blasphemy, some of the backlash you would get, despite the fact that Adam Schefter told us there were plenty of NFL personnel men who believed Nabers was the best wide receiver in the draft. Dane Brugler also said that. We had Daniel Jeremiah, agreeing. Lance Zerline from NFL.com straight up did have Malik Nabers as the wide receiver 1. So, yes, guys, I understand we have Daniel Jones at quarterback. I will take Kyler Murray over Daniel Jones 10 million times out of 10 million. I'm not debating that. That said, Dwayne, who do we think has the better chance of getting, a ridiculous target total, 160 plus? It's probably the guy that doesn't have Trey McBride on his team, competing for targets. So Malik Nabers, Marvin Harrison Jr., they were very similarly rated as recruits. The freaking Bolitnikoff Award was decided by one single vote between the two guys last year. So I think it's much closer than anyone is giving it credit for right now. So much of the focus is being put on Daniel Jones sucking that I don't think we're really giving enough credit to the target ceiling. And oh yeah, Brian Dable, last time he had a wide receiver this good was Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, where he was clearing 160 targets on an annual basis. So Malik Nabers, Dwayne, he's been one of our favorite targets at cost all off season. And I wouldn't be surprised if he and Marv are both putting in top 10 numbers. And I wouldn't be surprised if Nabers straight up outscores the NFL Draft's number 4 overall pick.
Yeah, look, I do a lot of work with the wide receiver rookie supermodel, and these guys graded out really close. And all we're doing is looking at the factors that have historically shown to be the most predictive for wide receiver careers. And these two guys both graded out in the top 3 that we've seen since 2018. It is Marvin Harrison Jr. 1, then we had Jamar Chase, and then we had Malik Nabers. And if you just go watch them, I will say, Ian, I'm with the film guys. Like, I'm not the film expert they are, but when I just purely watch the two players, Malik Nabers does more things that I love. So here's the thing. You mentioned it. Daniel Jones is the potential issue here. We've seen wide receivers that have had a quarterback with 200 to 224 yards passing per game. Ian, we've seen 168 of them have at least 400 routes. Only 5% of them have given you a wide receiver 1 finish. But 15% give you a wide receiver 2 finish. I think the best comp right now for Malik Nabers is Jalen Waddle. Tua Tagovailoa, people didn't think he was good in Jalen Waddle's rookie season. He was a guy that was going to throw for 200 to 225 yards per game, but what you just mentioned, he had that ability to get all of those targets. I think they're all coming to Malik Nabers. This is one of my favorite draft picks, obviously, in fantasy football in 2024.
Keep on keeping on drafting Malik Nabers. Love the Jalen Waddle call out where, again, if full people are scoring, we don't need to have this 20-yard 8 out. We don't need to have one bomb after another. We'll take some design goodness. And again, in an offense without really anywhere else to go with the football. So those are our hot takes ahead of 2024. Again, make sure you check out all of Dwayne's written content over at FantasyLife.com. Recently, his perfect draft strategy, truly, people, I do think is going to do a better job getting you ready than almost any other piece of content you can read out there. So appreciate you guys tuning into the Fantasy Life show. As always, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern. And if you want to see Dwayne and myself draft, you can check out those recorded versions on our YouTube page as well. So for Dwayne, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life show. And until next time, take care, everybody.